Wellington has followed many roads over the past 200 years throughout its development from virgin wilderness. Early settlers arrived to a dense and trackless forest through which wolves, bears, and other primeval beasts roamed at will. The pioneers wound through the forest mazes, encountering the Black River, which was particularly hazardous during high water. Nearly 14,000 acres, the forests were cleared within a few short decades, revealing fertile land capable of producing crops, pastures, and meadows for grazing. A most valuable agricultural asset, the land was well suited for the dairy farming industry.
1956, and I've been farming since then. What's that, 62 years, I guess.
How many acres you guys running?
About 400. That's not big as far as farms now, but with a dairy, we got 130 milk cows and about that many head of young cattle. Dan does almost all the milking, my son, and we like to milk them 12 hours apart. When a cow gets done here, Dan pushes a button, and then this gate will open and let the cow out, and then the back one will open up. When the gate's ready for the cow, that one automatically back here will open up and let the next cow in.
So how many farms do you deliver for?
There's 18.
How long have you been doing it?
Since 1978.
No kidding. You own your own truck?
Yeah.
And so you're hired by, what, are you offering your services to the farmer?
Yes.
Where are you taking the milk?
We're actually taking it to Dairyman's, which is Overland Farms on 105th in Cleveland, West 105th Street.
And
that's
how,
where I just came from. There's not too many left in Lorain County either.
not too many doing your
Dairyman.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the dairy farmer. And the same thing with the milk haulers also. It's going down. There's used to be a milk hauler around every corner, but it's not so much anymore.
How come?
7 days a week, 365. It don't make any difference what it's doing out. You gotta go. Just like a dairy farmer, you gotta milk them, you gotta feed them, and we gotta go pick it up.
You ever consider robotics?
Well, I think if we were going to make a change, that's probably one of the things we would think about. But they're awfully expensive, but they replace a lot of labor too. And those stalls are over $200,000 a piece, but they will handle like 65 cows or so. It actually gives you a lot more time to manage things, and I think, and you get a lot more information with the robotic milkers, so you can do a better job of managing.
Well, I grew up on a farm, and I was the oldest, so I had to milk the cows, and I hated them cows. Next thing you know, then I'm growing a few soybeans, and wife had horses, so we started baling hay, and that was probably about 1997. We're farming 1,400 right now. It was not possible to grow 100 bushel corn in probably in the 60s, early 60s, and now we're growing 220 bushel corn, so it's times 2 as far as production. We didn't have cabs. Of course, there wasn't any air conditioning. We have much better seeds, GPS, allows the tractors to drive themselves. And we turn them at the end, so we haven't got that far yet, but maybe that's coming. We got 3 computers in the planting tractors, all the data, including every seed that's planted in every field, go to the cloud, and my agronomist in Norwalk can tell me, he can look on his iPad and he knows where I'm at and what I'm doing. Real time. Totally different.
What's the same, though?
Well, you're still trying to grow something, and that depends on Mother Nature and the Lord, and harvest. Harvest comes at the same time. Everything matures in the fall. Springtime's the same. You start planting. We're here in Wellington, and we have a good dealer here, and he's less than a mile away, and so I'm red for that reason. They take good care of me, too.
I think you covered it.
There's a lot we have to offer down here. We got nice metro parks. We got a lot of corn and stuff, and wildlife.
Our cultural identity, I think we're still recognized as a farming community, the farming community, and I think that's really the core of how we're made up.
Well, Kirk and I are 5th generation farmers, and we wanted to farm, and this was kind of a way we could get into that.
Okay. One of the cool things is this is a deep water culture system, so we grow exclusively in water, and we pump air through that water at about a 4-foot interval to keep the roots oxygenated. So like in a soil system, if your garden were to flood and everything would start turning yellow because there would be no oxygen in the root systems. So we add oxygen to our water so our plants can continue to grow. The root systems typically grow about the same size as below as they do above. And it's really cool. You don't actually get to see that in a soil system, but the root systems can get very large.
So in this system, what we have here is a recirculating aquaculture system, which is raising fish in an indoor ecosystem. Coupled to that is a deep water culture hydroponic system. And so what's happening next is that water's going to gravity flow out through a series of filters. We're going to clean that water before it hits the plant beds to ensure that the water is very clean and we don't gunk up the root systems on the plants. So we have 3 beds that are 8 foot by 80 foot long. The water goes down and comes back, hits a drain. That drain then goes to a sump. That's the lowest part of the system. And then the water is pumped back to the fish tank to start the journey all over again. So it's a continual loop. We recycle all of our water, and we use about 95% less water than natural growing covers. So that's the big key element that's very eco-friendly, and we're producing on a small square footage, and we're producing a lot. So, but lots of lettuce, lots of Asian greens, some Swiss chard, we do some kale in the winter, and green onions as well. This is farm creativity, I guess. So this is just a regular old washing machine. We bought it brand new at Home Depot. And what we're doing here is where we put lettuce through a rinse cycle, make sure it's nice and clean. We put it in the washing machine and spin it dry.
Come on, Champ. He was a bottle-fed elk, which means that he will come up to us. He loves apples. Yeah. Very rare that he will let you touch his antler, which usually that would not be happening with a bull elk, because it's very tender when it's in the velvet stage, which is where it is right now.
See if he'll take one from me. You think he'll take one from me?
Of course he'll take one from you. Okay. He is. Would you like to try?
Sure.
Okay.
The amazing thing is how this large set of horns rarely, if ever, touches the fence. See? I mean, he's right up against it.
Get way in there so he doesn't have to get way out here.
Oh, yeah. How you doing, boy? You like those apples, don't you? Huh? I mean,
He wants to.
the maple leaves help with the selenium. They need the mineral from maple leaves. So in the natural, I think maple leaves are a dessert as well as the main course.
Look at that.
What does Bonnie Gray Farms have to do with Wellington?
Certainly, many of the people that have worked here through the years are from Wellington.
Six generations or more.
Before agriculture could grow to an industrial scale, transportation had to develop. Dr. Daniel J. Johns, a founding settler and the only doctor in the region for many years, secured a rail line running through Wellington by selling for a single dollar his private land to the Cincinnati Railroad Company. His foresight and generosity made Wellington a leading importer and exporter of vital agricultural products. This rail line and 1,600 square miles of prime dairy land attracted merchants like Hoare, Warner and Company, who made Wellington synonymous with cheesedom for over a quarter of a century. Hoare's prized Holstein cows, along with a streamlined factory system for cheese and butter production, thrived in Wellington. At its peak, Wellington was home to over 50 factories and lumber companies like H. Wadsworth and Son, all producing cheese products and supplies. By the late 19th century, however, cheese production declined as refrigeration cars made possible the distribution of fresh milk, which became more popular for both producers and consumers.
The ideas we had was to do a time capsule that would go ahead and memorialize this whole year. So we'll put in one of the calendars, the pull-out section from the paper, the book. We'll go ahead and ask, as we get later in the year, for people to submit memories of Wellington, of what Wellington has meant to them. We'll see all that. We won't even read it. We'll bury that time capsule with some memorabilia of today's Wellington, and let people in 50 or 100 years dig that up and hear right from the voices of the people who live here today. Wellington is we are a nice rural community, and that reminiscent of, you know, small town America. I think it's our duty to maintain that small town charm.
We also do a lot for the downtown as when it comes to aesthetics. So we had a program called Paint the Town Proud, where we had a few donations of paint to help the businesses kind of refresh their facade.
We need to also push the industrial and the business and the manufacturing aspect of jobs, because there are good jobs out there. Yeah. And there are good jobs right here in this community in those fields.
Mike's Cash for Gold, but if you look at the top of the building, it actually says Wellington Stables in the brick. And they would repair carriages, and you could board your horses there. I have a lot of people visit and walk through, and they're just in awe that we still have these beautiful brick buildings with a lot of different architectural elements, and they say it's just so charming.
I think our downtown will continue to survive. We have a strong Main Street Wellington. You know, again, guided by individuals in the beginning, such as Bill Brumfield and Pat Lindley, who saw that vision of making sure that this downtown is vibrant and successful. I think there's something to be said for a small town.
With our Bicentennial documentary, we're documenting everything about Wellington. And the enterprise has been all about Wellington for how long?
Over, it's been 154 years now, which is even impressive just to hear yourself say.
So how do you think the newspaper has changed over the years?
I mean, newspapers, the farther we move into the 21st century, they're changing for everybody. We still maintain a pretty loyal, steady customer base, but the model's always changing as far as people reading stuff online first. Just the way news is handled, the day-to-day, week-to-week, the style of writing articles is always changing.
I was at the Spirit of 76 Museum back a couple months ago, and I had the opportunity to look at the publications that you have stored there, which go back pretty much, I believe, to the time the paper first started.
Yep.
One thing that really impressed me back then was the advertising. They would do great big full-page ads. It was a lot different than what I see now.
Yeah, the ads are a lot more simple now too. You don't really see big elaborate drawings or big even computer-generated drawings. It's more just a simple logo, simple message. But yeah, things were very elaborate back then.
Can you describe for us what a typical day of reporting looks like here in Wellington?
It's something different every day, whether it's going to the high school to talk to a student about something special they're doing. It could be something sad as far as we have a huge problem with overdoses in the area. I've had a lot of days that have dealt with that. But whether it's a happy story or a sad story, it's always interesting. And it's my favorite part of the job, is just that it's never monotonous.
To many Southern whites during the 19th century, slavery was viewed simply as a commodity. They rationalized as essential to their prosperity the enslavement of millions of African people. Runaway slaves seeking freedom took great risks. If captured, they were often whipped, shackled, or sold to other slave owners. Oberlin, Ohio, had an open, vibrant African American community and provided a safe haven for many. With its network of back roads and safe houses, their secret underground railroad provided a path to Canada and freedom. John Price, a young runaway slave from Kentucky who had been living in Oberlin for about 2 years, was captured by slave hunters eager to cash in on the $500 bounty offered by his master. Once captured, Price was taken to Wellington, where his captors planned to board him on the evening southbound train. News of Price's kidnapping spread. In Wellington, crowds had already gathered in response to a fire that had engulfed a downtown business earlier that day. Upon Price's arrival at the Wadsworth Hotel, hundreds of people from both Oberlin and Wellington band together, demanding his release. A lengthy standoff ensued, culminating with the protesters freeing Price and taking him back to Oberlin, where, with the help of the Underground Railroad, he made his way to Canada. Those that helped John Price escape that day were indicted, faced jail time, and yet became known as the Rescuers. This conflict intensified the anti-slavery discourse occurring throughout the nation and fueled the descent to civil war.
Next year is Wellington's Bicentennial. What does that mean to you?
So it's another year.
What is Wellington's cultural identity? Meaning, how do people not from around Wellington see people from Wellington?
What? I really don't understand what you're saying.
How do people not from Wellington see people from Wellington?
How do people what?
How do people not from Wellington perceive people from Wellington?
What?
All right, moving on. So, what has changed about the people from Wellington?
I have not noticed any change because There ain't no real change. I mean, people are people, no matter where you go.
So what's remained the same?
What?
What's remained the same about these people?
I do not understand what he's saying.
How can you do all this puzzle?
All right. Thanks for your time, sir.
Well, I think the cultural identity is changing all the time.
Wellington means a community of family. It's like one big family. It's kind of like old school values.
I wish people thought younger. How's that?
Village, rural community, which makes up the vast portion of our country. I would say the heartland.
Are the homes mainly on South Main Street. It's just gorgeous to drive downtown and see these amazing, huge homes that were built in the late 1800s, early 19, probably 20s and 30s. And a lot of that came out of the cheese industry. They say the cheese barons built the homes, and actually Norton Eastman Funeral Home was at one time the largest homes in Wellington. And that was one of the gentlemen from the Hoare Warner Cheese Company.
Well, I think the cultural identity of Wellington is synonymous with community and the fact that we're a village. It's definitely a group of people that work together, that come together in times that are tough. We help each other out. We celebrate successes together. So I would say Wellington stands for community.
Seth Thomas Tower clock from the 1860s. The only thing that's really been changed, these are the original shafts, the wooden shafts that have been replaced by these pipes. Other than that, the clock face has been changed a couple of times. It used to be we spotlighted it from the outside at the face. Now we backlight it because we've gone to opaque glass.
They are all functioning now?
Absolutely, it's running. It's cool. That's a new gear, but all the rest are the original gearing.
From 18...
Yeah, and from the 1860s.
Herrick Memorial Library was gifted to the community by Myron T. Herrick, who lived on a farm in Wellington throughout much of his youth. Designed by Cleveland architect J. Milton Dyer, the building was erected in 1902 on the site of the American House Hotel. A lawyer, banker, railroad investor, and Ohio governor, Myron T. Herrick also served 2 appointments as ambassador to France, and in 1927 was the personal escort and confidant to Charles Lindbergh following his non-stop 33.5-hour transatlantic flight from New York to Paris, an extraordinary achievement for a solo pilot in a single-engine monoplane. Herrick was a much-admired figure in France, quite exceptional for an American in 1920s Paris. During World War I, when it appeared as if the Germans would march into Paris, Herrick refused to leave even though many French officials had evacuated. His courage, diplomacy, and kind nature earned him a permanent place in the hearts of the French. Ambassador Herrick came back to Wellington in 1928 to dedicate a plaque in memory of his parents, and upon his death in 1929, Herrick left a bequest to finance an addition to the library.
Since I grew up in Wellington, it's kind of influenced the way that I guess, like the people I've been around are from here. Well, I mean, I'm definitely, I guess I have like a small town way of thinking because I didn't grow up in like a big city, so I try to think of others like they're my community.
Yes, just really neat with the old architecture and the old buildings, and the museum is a neat place to go to reminisce and see the people that from way back that contributed to make Wellington great. A lot of history here. Really a lot for the size of Wellington.
Archibald M. Willard moved to Wellington from Bedford, Ohio at the age of 19. A self-taught artist, he drew, painted, and engraved his art on any medium available, including barn doors and outhouses, making him a graffiti artist of his day. Professionally, he painted murals on wagons and buggies for Trip Carriage and detailed furniture for A.G. Couch and Son, a company that manufactured furniture in Wellington for over half a century. Willard's main artistic achievement is his Spirit of 76 oil painting, which to this day hangs in Abbott Hall in Marblehead, Massachusetts, and serves as an iconic symbol of our nation's patriotism. In commemoration of its 50th anniversary this year, the Spirit of 76 Museum here in Wellington showcased the exhibit Yours Truly, A.M. Willard, which included 2 Spirit of 76 renditions along with other Willard works from collector Dan Zivko. Founded in 1968, the Southern Lorain County Historical Society Spirit of 76 Museum is home to over 4,000 artifacts and provides a broad look at the history of Wellington and surrounding areas.
Well, even though I live 40 minutes away, Wellington is kind of my home away from home, and I feel very welcome, and my classroom kind of feels like my home away from home.
You have to listen to this part to know that. So this end down here is talking too much? Okay. I knew it. I try not to say anything to see when they start to move. When you get to the end, if I am still talking about you, start to
Linda, she wants us to go to on the steps at the back of the town hall
for a picture right
group
now.
picture right now before we lose anybody.
Here we go.
Who can go through this?
Steps at the back. He has to keep in order.
If I fall? Yes.
How do you get, is there a door sign?
and Marilyn Wainio, cooking up scheme after scheme. And so it was a great time. I'm sad that it's over, but we had a wonderful time. We do have Nicole's book, Fully Equal to the Situation, on sale in the back of the auditorium if you'd like a copy. And here they come. Let's give them a round of applause.
What do you think about our bicentennial year? I mean, have you been covering
Oh,
the
wow.
different events?
There's a lot of community pride in Wellington. There's a deep, rich history that that people want to hear about, they want to talk about.
straight ahead. Okay, so the puppet then looks over the audience, waves.
Is the Wellington High School Dukes Marching Band from Wellington, Ohio, under the direction of Anthony Capone.
This lip sync contest, this national lip sync contest, apparently took on some heat here in Wellington, and you know, we really didn't have the time, any of us were all kind of busy. However, our town has called us out. So this is really about us responding to our town and not any national lip sync challenge. And in this town, fire, police, and EMS, we're one family. So this isn't about a lip sync challenge, national lip sync challenge for police departments. This is about Wellington Safety Services responding to our town. And in fact, that's the whole reason the song My Town by Michael Stanley was selected. We work for the community, that's the whole point. And we decided quite some time ago that police, fire, and EMS would work together on everything because we share the same goal, and that's serving people. So this whole video and this whole idea of working together collaboratively on this video is about our town. Well, you know, it's interesting. I was born and raised in Amherst, Ohio, not very far from here, obviously. And when I was growing up, that's kind of what Wellington is now. And so when I was invited back here to be chief, it was really kind of like coming home. So, you know, Wellington to me is like coming back home to my youth.
So the history of the park is it was property that was bought up in the early 20s by Guy Bernard Finley. He bought up these parcels of farmland here because he was pretty passionate about conservation and about the possibility that our forests would be depleted. They enlisted the Civilian Conservation Corps to come out and start planting trees.
The recreation back at that time, you had a lot of people swimming here and concessions and everything. How would you describe that?
Fun, exciting, busy. It was just busy. The beach, you could hardly walk. You'd step on somebody. It was just packed.
Yes.
And they would stop people from coming in. They'd shut the entrance. And when people would leave, then they'd let so many cars in.
First summer I worked here, that was my job on some weekend mornings, was just to walk around and just kind of police the area a little bit. That summer of '69 when we had that big rainstorm. Oh, yes. And we had the flood, the lake flood. We had like that 11 inches of rain in that rainstorm. That was my first summer here. And the cleanup after that was over with. We had a boat ramp. People could tie up their rowboats around the corner here, and all those boats got picked up and went over the spillway, and they were up halfway up in the trees on the back side of the spillway, just wrapped around the trees like aluminum cans.
Wow.
And we spent
amazing.
And Bridget, your husband worked here as well?
Yes. My husband worked for the concessionaire at the beach, Milt Wilhelm, and they lived across the street in the Century Home right at the park entrance that's on the west side of 58. And I think he was 8 or 9 years old. He would clean out boats, and then Dawn hired him as a camp attendant. And then he took over operating the sewage plant and water distribution in the park.
Yeah.
So what goes on here today?
Camping, now full hookup sites. Back then it was all non-electric.
Right.
Also, I think kayaking has become very popular.
Right. Here?
Everywhere, but yes, here for sure. They have a canoe and kayak launch, and that's made it really easy for folks who are just new to kayaking or who may be disabled. They can get into those types of boats with no trouble at all.
Right.
There's a mountain bike trail here that's become very popular.
So Laura, it's my understanding that your dad, Don Riddle, was the first park manager here.
When the parks were coming to be, they asked him if he wanted to be the manager of one of the first state parks, and of course he said yes. And lived in the house that is now the office. He lived there 35 5 years, him and my mother. I lived there 22 years. So Family Park is my backyard. It's where I grew up.
And when you drive down 58, or when you're coming up 58 going north, there's nothing that tells you the story of what is back in here.
Right.
There are no pine trees. You don't see the lake. You know, you just don't see this expanse
You
of
don't know the beauty that's
wilderness.
here.
Yeah. So they always would dub it as a hidden gem.
Mm-hmm.
And still
And
do
it
dub
is.
it that way.
Still,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now Sarah is pursuing the art, right?
Yes, she
how's that going?
That's going
compared
great.
to yours and Kathy's journeys?
I think it's going great. She got her graduate artist diploma from Peabody. She lived at a retirement home, and she would go to the memory care unit and play songs from the 50s, and these people were like, they remembered it.
as a potential enrichment of the community, Lindley Center is just a great thing to be a part of, and like I say, we are building a culture here that's going to outlast all of us.
And just between the namesake of the Lindley Center and Mr. Brumfield, I'm sure just two people that meant so much to the town. What did he mean to both of you as far as getting this thing going and maybe even laying some seeds to have this documentary in the first place?
He had his heart and his soul in this place. This was his love letter to his wife. He was very passionate about this community, very passionate about the theater, and it showed in everything that he did.
A long time ago, Bill and I had a conversation about why the heck are we doing this? You know, and because we have no children in school anymore, and we were feeling like we were becoming old timers, and he actually said, I mean, we both agreed that the whole reason why we were even doing this Friends of Theater thing was for the kids, and he said that he loved just being able to be part of this growing community and stuff.
2008, maybe? We were in a band competition, and all of us saying, why haven't we had any theater since Ginger Mateer retired? And Dave Conklin, of course, being Dave Conklin, had this brilliant idea that we just start doing something. Why not just start doing something? So we did. If I had known how much fun this was, this is what I would have done my whole life.
I'm the costumer. I'm hoping to get the kids into being the costumers eventually. That's our goal, always.
Just thinking, I was lucky to get in at the tail end of the old days in McCormick, because I saw how everything was done with tape and glue and scissors, and then moving over to the Lindley Center was like, okay, now everything's polished, we got everything brand new and everything works, but there was still that element of everybody putting all their resources and all their imagination together to make it work. So it was the best of everything, best of both worlds.
Pat and Bill were both very good friends of mine. I remember the two of them meeting because of the arts, and so thankful that his love for Pat developed into what we now have as the Lindley Center. We're so lucky to have something like the Lindley Center in Wellington for our kids to be able to perform, to learn the backstage, to learn everything there is about theater and performing arts.
It was nice during the transition to watch the kids be astounded by moving to the Lindley Center from the McCormick Middle School. And I hope that the kids that are there now continue to appreciate the fact that they have the Lindley Center to work in.
Another small town, or so it seems, while caught up in the race. A couple, 3 lights, I'll pass right through and leave without a trace. Sure, it's got some trees and a redneck charm, with corn and beans around, but I'm on my way, gotta find a brighter day. But then I meet a couple folks, we share some thoughts, our views compare, and I look into their eyes, see a growing bond, a reason to care. Well, they live a kind of innocence, a heart filled to the brim, a welcome open door, always giving more, coupled with a shrug, a hug, a humble grin. And I know I am home once love we grow and gladly share. And I know we are home once more. Yeah, release the narrow mind, embrace the present time, lifted by the love our shoulders really bear. And I know we are home once more.
So he should walk and then he should come halfway and spin 360
Well,
degrees.
stop. Now they're going to talk about you for a minute.
You couldn't hold a natural smile for minutes of photography.
What are you doing? I think I have a collar sort of.
You know what? If this ends up on some video.
Where good things are happening. Wellington, where the faces are so warm. Wellington, where the sidewalks shimmer with light. Your life in Wellington is just what you need and want. Wellington, where the bands are playing out. Wellington, where the businesses are strong. Wellington, where 200 years of progress wove a sturdy rope that told us down the long. Wellington, Ohio, come on down, come on up, yeah. Wellington, Ohio, come on down, come on up. Wellington, Ohio, come on down, come on up. Wellington, Ohio, come on down, come on up. Way Crinkle cellophane and laid on the outlays. Gonna shake up the Triscuit marks now. Scratch and stiff on